Hey everybody, welcome to week 5. I am going to run through a couple things with this presentation today. First, sort of a high level, where are we with this course? I'm going to talk a little bit about this week's content in almost a lecture style. And then finally, I will touch on your assignment due this week. So over the last 4 weeks, we've been taking a look at the 10 types of innovation. So how do we deconstruct a company and its behavior to identify what makes it unique and what is leading to its success? So you took a look at company configuration, sort of the back end of the house. You took a look at products, and of course we all think of products when we think of innovation, but hopefully you're starting to see how a company can be thought of as creative and definitely successful by incorporating more than just a good product. And then finally, the last blocks of innovation were around customer experience. So again, we love to think of innovative companies because they tend to have great brands and a great customer experience. It's a chicken and egg situation. You need pretty much success in all 3 zones of the 10 types of innovation to have a successful company. So keep that in mind as you're starting to apply the framework and the ways you're thinking about using it in your own small business or in a company you work for. So that leads me to this point in the course with a general understanding of how companies can think about innovation with some examples of sort of bigger, more corporate companies like the podcast you listen to. Now is the time to start applying those things to a small business environment. So that's what we're focused on this week and really next and the finals week. We're going to do an individual assignment this week where you sort of practice that exercise, practice that thinking. Then in weeks 6 and 7, you're going to start working as a team on your final assignment, which will be an innovation plan for the small business that we've selected as a case study to use throughout these 3 weeks. So let me pause there and acknowledge that I took a survey of our students last week just to sort of assess how you were feeling about the course, whether workload, content was resonating with you. Reminder, I still need several of you to complete that survey, so please do so this week. But what I did hear is that, yes, we're starting to feel like we're grasping terms, we're feeling good about content, we're ready to think about it in a small business world, given the bigger company examples that we've had. And so I did somewhat adjust the reading that you've had originally assigned this week and next to really try to get at that practical nature of what do we do with this knowledge? How do we practice applying it? So hopefully you see that resonated in the weeks to come. Your feedback is welcome. So let me pause there and we will dive into this week's content. And then again, I will close with instructions for this week's assignment. When I think about this week's content, that is another item of feedback that you guys have had really from the get-go. I love your analytical brains. A lot of you have asked about sort of checklists. How do I do it? What do I do? I need some guidance on the actual process of applying innovation. So I tried to create that for you in this week's content and give you some ideas of, at least from my perspective, how you can generalize ways to think about innovation in a small business context beyond the, yes, we have the 10 types framework now, but even more so. So I know there's lots of potential. What's my idea generation process look like? What are the sorts of questions that I should be asking myself to think of ideas? And it's worth noting that alongside all of this business knowledge and content, you have been regularly assigned your personal development exercises. Hopefully those are helping as well. Those types of qualities and behavior are going to make you more successful in applying business content. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to use the material direct from Canvas today versus slide presentations because I want to make sure you're getting to where you need to with this week's assignments. There is more content this week and a bigger assignment, so just make sure you're working ahead and paying attention to that. Here we go. Wish me luck here. Okay. Awesome. Okay. So I am on Canvas here to get to this content that I'm going to walk through. Those of you that prefer to learn by reading, this is all going to be written up for you online, but I know some of you requested that I continue these lecture videos, so I'm glad you're finding them helpful and happy to do so. I do agree that sometimes it can be good to hear things and read things in different ways. So let me enter what the platform looks like for you all as students. I am working on this week's modules. So if you're going down to week 5, you'll have this all on a to-do list, but I'm delving in here. This is the content about how to apply innovation in a small business. This will download this document, but please note it is also available in your files over here. This is the content that I'm going to use as the basis of my quote-unquote lecture today. Again, you can read it, and I think that will help crystallize things. So the gist of it is we have these 10 types of innovation. We have ingredients of what makes an innovative person. How does this all come together and how do we apply it in a small business world? So when I thought about that question and I thought about the request for a checklist, I did try to bucket my feedback and think of things that you can sort of run through when I want to work on innovation for my company. What are my options? So at a high level, I think that there are really 3 big picture options for how are you innovative. One, and this is probably what most people think of, you create a new product, you create a new service. So you've got the next iPhone cooking, or you have the next Fitbit cooking. I would again remind you that this is hard to do, and it can be expensive, but it's also oftentimes what you're founding a company around. How do people really do this? Well, most of their success starts with customer insights. So all those exercises where you've been doing observation and talking and asking people questions, that's because a product or a service is consumed generally by a person. So to get to a good product or service, something that's going to compel someone to purchase something, we need to be really in touch with customers. So we're going to talk about that more as I go through this lecture. But this second big picture option for how do I go about innovation, well, I take a look at what I'm currently doing and I get better. So how do I improve my current business model, my current operations, and my customer experience? That may sound really simple, but if any of you work in a small business now or have before, you know that time is a luxury that not many small business owners have. So it isn't unheard of that it would be hard to improve your business model. You don't know what you don't know. You might not have the time. You're living day by day. You're managing a lot. So one way that we can be innovative is really carving out the time and doing the research on how we get better at what we're currently doing. And then third option, and again, this will sound simple, but how do we become more innovative for our company? We copy from the experts. So we take a look at the playbook of bigger companies that have been successful in innovation, and we simply beg, borrow, and steal. And very, of course, like in a legal sense, don't copy a product to anything with a patent. But your book does a really nice job of giving some examples of common playbooks for how companies are innovatively structured. So we're going to spend more time on that in week 6, but I do want to acknowledge it within the presentation today. An example of what I mean by a playbook. So think of some of the companies that we've studied. Fitbit, for example, they have a common playbook for innovation is something called freemium pricing. So you can get the Fitbit app at no cost, and you get a certain set of services, but the constant incentive is for you to upgrade. So that's a common playbook for a company, a freemium price structure. We also took a look at Southwest Airlines. They are a cost-conscious company. So that was their entryway into a market, no frills. A lot of you have been talking about Apple as a company. They are someone you'll see as a common playbook by having a product system that people can interact with. Amazon is another one that is constantly mentioned. The playbook that's suggested of them, I believe in your textbook, is about predictive analytics. So there are some just common behaviors that we see in companies that tend to lead to a lot of innovation and success. And so one way you can improve and apply in your own small business is know those plays and try to apply them. It's that analysis of what's a good fit for me and what do I know about what's out there and how I could apply it to myself. So again, we're going to work on that in week 6, but I want to acknowledge it within today's discussion as you're thinking about big picture options. So let me elaborate on these items here, how to processes and ideas of how to create a new product or framework, and processes and ideas of how to innovate and improve your current business model. So moving to page 2 here. Again, I'm trying to really use structure to let you know that you can think about this in a systematic way. So what I'm presenting to you on these options are sort of big picture, what's the idea, how are we going to do this, exploration tools, and then questions that you're essentially asking yourself throughout this process if you were applying it in your own small business world. So innovation by creation, a new product or a service. And I again touched on this already, but I'll say it again. This is about knowing your customers inside and out. Common vernacular when it comes to the business world on how we're starting to know our customers, because we want to know about our customers' jobs and we want to know about their pain points or their gains. By jobs, everyone has, I don't mean just work. As you go about your day, for the most part, there is rhyme or reason to the behavior that you're doing. So one customer job is getting to point A to point B. And you've seen a lot of innovation in that job. So if I were the CEO of Uber, I watched that sometimes people have difficulty getting from point A to point B, and that difficulty is not well met by current providers, i.e. taxi cabs. So what can I do to solve that customer's problem, make their job easier? I spent a lot of time watching that customer. What sort of difficulties do they have around transportation? Uber, for example, well, I want to be able to hail a ride without being on a common street corner where there's taxi cabs. So by knowing your customer's behavior or potential customer's behavior, knowing what doesn't work about current solutions, that's how you start to piece together potential products, potential services. It's all about customers, the jobs that they have to do during a day, and then plugging in what you can provide that reduces current frustrations with that job or provides them even more benefits. So a lot of the times you'll hear about pain points within idea generation, but it's also worth acknowledging that sometimes the best products are about providing customer gains. So we want to provide a positive experience. We're not just problem solving. We're introducing even more options and enjoyment to our customers' lives. So think a lot of entertainment businesses, Netflix, things like that. I wasn't necessarily in need or a problem with my entertainment time, but it's a new solution that helps me have a better day-to-day life. So again, what you'll read here, if you're going to be focused on innovation by creation of a product or service, it's all about knowing your customers. How do I go about exploring that? I provided you 2 frameworks here that I want you to interact with. One is an article by Clayton Christensen. You'll recognize that name, as he's also the author of The Innovator DNA. Very, very, very popular intellectual within this space. So this article is available on Canvas, as is a section from this book about customer profiles, how to create a strong value proposition by solving customer pains and providing them gains. This is pretty common entrepreneurship content. You may have encountered this in other BG classes. This is a quick read, so scan those pages, and then there's a quick video to introduce it as well. These are the tools that I would argue are how you would start to think about innovation in product creation. These are my favorites, at least, not an exhaustive list. And then finally, at the end of the day, what are the sorts of questions you're asking yourself to be able to start generating these ideas? And I mentioned this, many of these in my description. So when was the last time I was really frustrated in trying to accomplish a goal? What was my goal? What was I really trying to do? We talked about the transportation example. What products or services would make my ideal customer's life easier, more enjoyable? So again, we talked about how Uber filled a need for customers. What do I currently do? Taxi cab example. How would I describe my customers or desired customers? So one way to really be sure that you're getting at the core of a customer job, the core of what is motivating them, what is bothering them, is having a really specific definition of who your customer is. So how do you do that? These are called customer segments, by the way. You've encountered this description before in this class, and hopefully others that you have at BG. So how do we define the customer segment that we're serving? Because if we can narrowly define that, we're gonna have a really good idea of how our product or service plugs in for them. So for example, I am female. I am in my 30s. Well, I am 30. I do not have children, but I do have a full-time job. So one would argue that I have a lot of disposable income. So that's sort of the demographic characteristics of how I would become a part of a customer segment. And you know, a business that has found a really good niche for a customer segment that includes people like me, I bet other women in this class can appreciate this, Target. Target arguably I am a major customer segment for them. They really position their stores, their products, their sales, even your experience in the store. It resonates really well with my demographic. So we tend to find beauty products right when I walk in. There's usually a Starbucks. Millennial women also love Starbucks. Everyone loves Starbucks, but you know what I mean. So they, as a company, while yes, they can serve everyone, they're going to have a couple customer segments that they really focus on, that they really resonate with. If you don't know that about your company or the product or idea that you're working on, then you're going to fail from the get-go. So my point here again connects back to know your customer, know them well. And then finally, one way to know your customer and know them well is ask yourself, who's not buying from me? So if I create Fitbit, or I create Starbucks, or I create my small business, who am I not going to serve? And that's okay. You don't always want to be everything to everyone, because then you don't typically have a very strong value proposition. So Fitbit, for example, they didn't go after the athletes. They thought that those customers were already well serviced. They define their customer segment differently, and then they define their product differently because of that. So I'm going to touch on this in more detail at the end of this presentation, But note that one of your assignments this week is going to be interacting with this idea of customer segments. That's thinking about customer segments is one way to get to innovation. One way to think about new ideas is to go back to your customers. Okay, stepping back, second. Again, another way to think about innovation is thinking about getting better. How do you do that? Know your industry. So I again touched on this to start the presentation. If you are running a small business, you've got a lot on your plate, and you also don't have a ton of insight into your peers by nature. You know, you're not a big enough company to be doing a ton of consultative data. You don't have big CEOs that have had experience in like businesses that are coming to your team. So there's a lot of reasons why it is more difficult for a small business to know their industry well, but that also means that that's a great, focusing on that is a great way for you to improve your company and improve your ideas. So I would suggest that the process for innovation when it comes to, another process for innovation when it comes to your small business is really sort of creating an improvement, carving out the time to create an improvement plan for your company. Knowing what I do well, knowing what I don't do well, knowing what's around the horizon. So what sort of trends are coming in my industry that I need to be prepared for? Those are some of the best ways to be innovative and to protect yourself from disruption happening around you. So some common tools as to how you would go about making an improvement plan for your company. One of the most popular frameworks is called a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You guys have probably heard this before. I gave you some places where you can read about it if you have not, but thinking about those 4 big categories are a really good way to think about your company and how you want to get better. So they think of SWOT as a quadrant. Strengths and weaknesses are things that are internal to your company. So I know that a strength of mine is brand and customer engagement. A weakness of mine is staff turnover. Those are internal to my company. Opportunities and threats are thought of as things that are external to your company. So that would be, hey, I know that the Zoomer generation is going to be the largest in history and they love the technology that I'm creating. So that's an opportunity for my company. It's about things that are happening in the environment around my business. And again, threats are external to your company. So in the same vein, if I am an in-store retailer, a threat to my company, if I'm not adjusting, is that most people are making purchases online. So particularly in COVID times, a lot of consumer behavior was accelerated for online purchases. If I'm not prepared for that, that's a threat to the existence of my company, and it's more about the environment around me than things that I control. A weakness would be, I don't have a company website. So that's an exploration tool that you can use around innovation in this area. Other ways that you could pursue innovation and improvement of your company is research. You guys being in school actually have access to a lot of good data and databases about industries and companies. So really it's capturing conversations that I'm not going to be able to have as an individual. I'm not going to be able to call up every other peer in my market and be like, hey, what are your sales this year? What sort of costs are you running into? But statisticians and economists do. And so using that data and applying it to your business is one way to pursue innovative ideas. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but I listed a ton of questions that you can essentially ask yourself about the business that you work in, the business that you own, to sort of build this improvement plan and this analysis of how you can get better and innovative as a company. Essentially, what is trending within my environment? What do I think I do well? What do I think I do poorly? And then figuring out how you're going to respond to that is where the idea generation comes in. And I find it happens for people pretty naturally. So if I'm aware of my weaknesses, I can become pretty aware of generating solutions to those weaknesses. So this is going to be another part of your assignment this week. You're going to conduct a SWOT analysis of a local small business, and you're going to interact with some of this data that we're talking about. So these two concepts we're practicing this week on a small business for you to sort of get your hands dirty, practice sort of the process of idea generation. And then next week, we'll do it again by studying commonplace of other companies and using them in a small business environment. And that will culminate in your final project. So let me switch gears here. This is sort of concluding my instructions on application of innovation in a small business. How are we going to do this? What are the questions we're going to ask ourselves? You're going to practice it this week and over the next 2 weeks. Let me delve into that a little bit more with comments on your assignment for the week. So again, I will go back to Canvas and guide you to where you should be looking on here. This is your assignment this week. It is individual instructions for a case study. Let me go here to show you a little bit of content. I'm going to Files, Quarry Hill Orchards Materials. So the best way to get good at innovation, practice. And we're going to do so with a small business over the next 3 weeks. We have a local company called Quarry Hill Orchards who volunteered to be a case study for you all around innovation. Hopefully some of you have heard of them, or if you haven't, they are located in Berlin Heights. For those of you that are local, love for you to check them out at some point over the next 3 weeks. Visiting their location, again, using those powers of observation and new experiences, I think will help you with idea generation about their company. But for this week's assignment, we're delving into Quarry Hill Orchards. So in terms of instructions, first thing to do is read about the company. So I put together this description for you. Within this write-up, you should find a lot of information in regards to the 10 types of innovation. It is all available on Canvas. I also have some company financials, mock financials, for you to peruse in thinking about the company. And again, that's a good idea in the SWOT analysis. Know your numbers, measure, measure, measure for a company. So you can learn about how they generate income. You can learn about how the company's expenses come out. So this is available on Canvas for you. These are not raw numbers, so I used a percentage, but they are inspired by the company's actual activity. So hopefully that is helpful to you all. So in interacting with the company, obviously get to know them first. There's a case study write-up, there's their financials. I also put together a host of information of industry research about the company. These are called IBIS World reports. This is an example of one of those tools that you can use for innovation. I love these reports. I find them really well written, simple to understand. They are not as long as they look, by the way. They provide great little dynamics of what's going on with the company. So key trends, for example, they aren't expecting fruit and vegetable markets to have a lot of consumer spending. It's growing in terms of consumer demand because of consumer preferences. Operators compete fiercely with one another. Anywho, you will find a lot of data within these reports. I put up several, but I would start with vegetable markets and fruit. Okay, so you're gonna get to know the company with all this material. Start here, the write-up, the financials, delve into that later as you need it. And then here are the instructions for what you're going to turn into me. At the end of the day, you are conducting an individual analysis of Quarry Hill Orchards, our small business case study. You're doing an analysis of the company in an effort to generate ideas for yourself about how they can be more innovative. What can they do to improve? What new additions, offerings, reconfiguration should they pursue for their company to be successful long term? You're going to do this as an individual, just for practice, and then you're going to come together as a team to make an innovation plan about this company. And we're going to ask for your best 3 to 5 ideas in relation to Quarry Hill Orchards, and then write up why it's likely to be successful. So that's your final project. But this week is your individual analysis, and the deliverable that I'm looking for is 8 PowerPoint slides of your individual company analysis. 8 PowerPoint slides because I'm looking for 3 big things that you're doing throughout the process. One is an exploration of Quarry Hill's customer segments. So we talked about one way to be innovative is know your customers well. Practice doing that with Quarry Hill Orchards. So I want you to pick out 3 possible customer segments that they could service. Be specific, make sure they're actionable. And then I want you to think about those customers. Why might they come to Quarry Hill Orchards? What can they provide to them? What customer jobs do they need to do? What pain can we alleviate for them? What gain can we provide for them to enjoy? So explore 3 customer segments. Use the content that I provided to you, obviously, in the application of a small business write-up. So after your exploration, I want you to make note of one idea, one innovation idea for Quarry Hill Orchards based on your exploration of customers. So I believe that Quarry Hill should, let's see. I believe that Quarry Hill Orchards should host an annual dog fashion show because I know that small families are a potential customer segment of theirs, and 65% of them are likely to have a family pet, and it would be a motivator to visit the farm. So that's the sort of idea. I want you to get at the root of who the customer is, what sort of behavior they have, why they might come to the farm, and then share at least one idea of what the company can do to be innovative and reach those customers. Second part of your analysis is you're going to look at the industry. You're going to look at their current performance. So you're going to do a SWOT analysis of Quarry Hill Orchards. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You can obviously use the write-up that I provided to you. It's going to have a lot of information about the company that you should be able to categorize in that way. We should also use those IBIS World reports. I think those will be helpful in particular around understanding opportunities and threats coming to the business. I want you to think about that analysis and do one slide for each quadrant: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I want you to be specific. So if a strength you believe is customer engagement, please don't just list that. That won't get you many points. List why you know that customer engagement is a strength. So they have 5,000 Instagram followers, and I see that they do regular story updates and poll views. So do that SWOT analysis of the company, and again, make sure you know at least one innovation idea for Quarry Hill that was generated by the process. And then finally, as you're doing these 2 exercises, and as you're thinking about innovation ideas that you're going to use ultimately in your final project, which is the innovation plan for Quarry Hill Orchards, you're going to run into questions, which is completely understandable. You're probably going to have to make some assumptions about the company. throughout this process. I would encourage you to do so. Just make note if it's something, you know, really significant, but also generate questions for the owners that would help you, things that you are just curious about that you ran into throughout your analysis. Why do they do certain things, or why haven't they tried X, Y, or Z? Have they tried, you know, A, B, and C? I want you to share one slide of those questions, and I'm going to do my best to get answers for you before you turn in your final product, your final project, your team final project. So put together good, thoughtful questions that can help you be successful in your future assignments around this company. Second page here, it's just a breakdown of how things are going to be scored and points available. Okay, so that is your assignment for the week and some content for you to be thinking about. This is going to be one of those things I'll acknowledge. There's a lot that you could think about, a lot that you could explore. Give yourself some time to do so. I really want you to enjoy thinking about the company, thinking about innovation, and trying to apply concepts we've been learning in this class. So give yourself some time for the exploration, and then give yourself some time for crystallizing your analysis on those 8 PowerPoint slides that you're going to turn in to me. I am available via email for questions, or if we need to set up a conversation, happy to do that. I wish you good luck. Don't be alarmed that you haven't done this before. I think you'll enjoy it, and all ideas, you know, if you have justification for how they're going to earn money, are probably decent ideas. And if not, you can ask the owners whether they think so or not. Okay, that's all for now. I want you guys to enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks again.